Good morning, and let me start this video by saying that the garden is mostly fine, the house is fine, albeit a little bit of a damp basement, but that is nothing compared to what some people have been going through over the last 3 days. First thing you might notice is the bench behind me is different. Our beloved yellow bench that we love to sit in. This was not a result of the storm, it just collapsed the other day when we were sitting in it, but it's pretty old. That wasn't a big surprise. We'll be looking to replace it in the spring. But back to the main subject of this video, which is the catastrophic rainstorm that we had on Friday night. Now, the forecast was calling for rain and thunder showers, but nothing could have prepared us from what actually happened. Constant thunder and lightning, and I mean constant, multiple lightning strikes per second for hours, and I think the whole thing lasted about 18 hours. It was a heavy, heavy downpour that did not let up for a second, and when all was said and done, we had a foot of rain, a foot, over an 18-hour period. That's an entire summer's worth of rain. And the result of that was catastrophic flooding happening only about 10 minutes from here. Now we're up on top of a hill that slopes down towards the ocean right across the street from us. So there is zero chance of flooding here where we were. We did get a little bit of water pooling in the basement, which has never happened before. But our neighbors ended up with, I think, 12 to 14 inches of water in their basement. And as I'm filming this, it's been close to 3 days since the worst of this has hit. But the reason I wanted to make this video today is to show you the aftermath and maybe talk about if there's anything that we can do as gardeners to prepare for these freak weather events that seem to be more and more frequent. So right behind me here is a whole row of sunflowers that are just getting ready to bloom, and that was my main concern. I had two main points of concern in the garden while all this was happening. And the first was anything that was significantly tall, like sunflowers. As you can see though, they were all completely fine. These ones right here should be ready to cut tomorrow, I think. Maybe that one might get cut today, but today is Monday and I don't have a market until Wednesday. So my normal harvest time would be early Tuesday morning, which would be tomorrow. So yeah, zero damage from the sunflowers. And in fact, most of this garden is completely fine. The one issue that happened in here though, we did have a few things knocked over. The first is this scabiosa, and you see it's only been 3 days, but even though the main stalk has been knocked over, it's starting to grow up, and this is the point where it would get cut, so this might actually be perfectly fine. But all those side shoots, they can tell that the main branch is now horizontal, and all of these side shoots have started to shoot right up. So this might not actually be a big problem. Having said that though, what I really should have done was use netting on these plants, which I didn't. That is definitely evident on my snapdragons, where we have the same thing is starting to happen there. And this, which I've just recently discovered, is a type of cress. I didn't remember what this was in my last video, but I can start to see now those little beads. I can't remember which type of cress. I need to go and study my seed packets. But some of these plants are fine. I can just lift them up, and I might have to do some staking in here, but most of the row has actually snapped. So this was a lot of plants. This was a beautiful filler, and most of it now is toast. So that is a big loss, and it could have been avoided had I just spent the 10 minutes to put netting over this row in the first place. It's the same row that has the scabiosa in front. I am lucky to have a whole bunch of snapdragons that are still standing, but if you look carefully, these were snapdragons that had actually fallen over earlier in the spring, and what is still standing are the side shoots. So I guess it's a little bit like pinching. So as far as this cress goes, it may be a complete loss except for those handful of plants that are still standing, but I'm going to come in here later and see what I can salvage. As far as the plants in the cutting garden goes, it's relatively unscathed. Nothing has been broken or knocked over in here. And the tallest things would be these lilies, most of which are getting ready to bloom. A lot of these are my double rose lilies. I've just put in a few new ones that my mom brought me actually, and I'm noticing I've never seen that before. It looks like it's causing some damage on some of these bulbs. These are brand new plants though, so I wasn't going to cut these anyway. I might just have to sacrifice all those buds and break them off. even the tarragon, some of it's knocked over just a little bit, but I'm not sure I mentioned we didn't get any wind with this storm. It was mostly just very heavy rain. I'm looking at the Rudbeckia, you'd never even know anything had happened. When we come down here to the bottom though, you'll see that the mulch has been washed away. These two rows here had a good layer of mulch in between, and it must be slightly downhill towards the path because all the mulch has been washed down to this area here, and we actually had to sweep quite a bit of it off of that concrete. But I have been putting fresh wood chips down, and I didn't actually get to this spot, so that's probably a good thing because a lot of it would have been displaced. And that brings me to the second thing that I was most worried about during the storm, and that is everything that I direct seeded less than a week ago. I put so many seeds in the ground. I think I emptied 18 seed packets, and I do see a few things coming up, but I'm worried that a good chunk of it is going to be a complete loss. I have found quite a few seed packets that only had a handful of seeds. Thank you, Mr. Blue Jay. That only had a handful of seeds, so I did put a bunch of it in the ground. This bed had my oregano in it. It now houses a row of asters along the back. So this is green drops ornamental grass. There's quite a bit of it coming up, and it's mostly still in the straight line that I had planted it in, so that is good. And in the middle I had a handful of Cosmo seeds. I can't remember which variety. I think a yellow and orange variety, and also some bachelor's buttons. So maybe just a dozen seed of each. So those are along the middle, in between the asters and the grass. So nothing from them yet, but the grass is successful. That's good. This bed right next to it had my elephant garlic. I'm very glad I got that out of the ground. And I direct seeded the very last of my zinnias. Nothing here yet. I'm really hoping those pop up. Now on the other side of the walkway, 4 rows out of 7 have been torn up and reseeded. And so far I only see life out of 1 of them. So the first row is all pro-cut sunflowers, nothing out of that one yet. If those seeds are still in place, I should start to see those within a day or two, I would hope. This row is the one that is successful. This one has ornamental broom corn, very tall, 6 to 8 feet. The seeds are bright red, so they're pretty easy to see. There's one. There's a few right there, and I doubt the camera will pick it up, but I do see quite a bit of it back there towards the end. And I do have another seed packet of that too, so if I have any more failures, I'll be doing another planting of that. You can actually see where water came up to about here. This row actually starts here, but some of the soil's been washed away, and I can actually see some of the grass seed in the path, so I may try to move some of those later. Do some weeding while I'm at it. This row next to the arrow is a bit of a mishmash. I found I had little bits of seed left in things like kale and beets, lettuce and spinach, so I did a little bit of each. I think I did maybe 6 inches of a whole bunch of different things in this row, so we'll see what comes up. And most of that is because it's getting a little bit too late in the season to expect a big harvest out of anything you're direct seeding at this point. But you can plant things like that closer together and just harvest them when they're small, and that works really well for things like greens. I think I might have put some cilantro seed in there too, because you can never have enough of that. You can see how the rain was so heavy and it pooled and ended up splashing mud all over these plant markers. So there are, what does that mean? Pro-cut red. Oh, 1.5 rows, and then I ran out of seed. So the other one is red lemon bicolor. And those are both really good for fall. These are 60-day sunflowers, and I planted them on July 20th. Yes, today is the 25th, I'm pretty sure. So that means that I planted them 5 days ago, and I definitely should be seeing results by now. But I've seeded sunflowers in plug trays and they've come up in 3 days or less, so that I am a little bit concerned about that. I could replant at this point, but it's getting pretty late in the season, and I have a really big market in the first half of September that I was hoping to have all these sunflowers for, so we'll see. These raised beds on the other side of the greenhouse are perfectly fine. No broken stems, nothing, just some dirts that splashed up onto the lower leaves, but that's not really a problem. Let's have a moment to appreciate these Casablanca lilies. I look forward to these every year, and the first ones opened up during the storm. Now these have been here 5 or 6 years. They just get taller and stronger and more floriferous every year. Let's check out the Kirkosmia too while it's in full bloom, because it might not be next time I make a video. My second patch of sunflowers, also standing perfectly. So if you haven't already, you're likely going to see some pretty horrific footage coming out of Nova Scotia. And the worst of it is only about 10 to 12 minutes from here. But we are perfectly fine. We're incredibly lucky. And all I have to do this evening is try to salvage that cress and maybe rake some mulch back into place. So that leads me to think, is there anything we as gardeners can do to prepare for freak weather events like this? This is the most rain that we've had here in 50 years. I think I read somewhere 1971. So it's not like we should be worried about this happening all the time. But then had I spent 10 minutes putting floral netting over that cress, it would have saved me probably 20 minutes of trying to salvage it and maybe not even being able to. Maybe that crop is a big loss. So I caught myself this year saying, I've never really had to net anything, so I'm not going to bother. I have a giant roll of floral netting in the basement. It wouldn't have taken me very long to put that up, and I think next year I'm going to do that. I think that's going to be my big goal for next year. Net things just in case, because you never know. As far as vegetables go, that's all perfectly fine. Everything's low growing except the tomatoes, which are caged and staked. The cucumbers have nice strong supports to climb up. They're fine. It's just these cut flowers that I grow that are more of a concern. So I suppose better safe than sorry. Just put the netting up, even though it's a pain in the butt. Even though it's a bigger pain in the butt to take it down at the end of the season, just put the netting up. But this was a very dramatic storm, and it's going to take a long time for all those roads and bridges to be fixed. The highway, at least now, is passable. The flooding has subsided enough. So I guess I better get to work. I'm going to try to salvage that cress first thing, then I'm going to spend some time raking mulch and hopefully get that all cleaned up before I see you back here in the garden next time. Thank you so much for watching.